Hello, and welcome to the Game On podcast. My name is Adam Bellow. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Breakout EDU, but I'm also a father, a serial edtech entrepreneur, and an advocate for positive change in the classroom. Each episode of the Game On podcast is going to feature a new voice from someone who's making an amazing impact and helping to pave the way for the future of education. We're going to get to explore their ideas and opinions, as well as learn about some of the successes and failures that made these amazing educational gurus who they are. All right, let's get started. All right, welcome to the Game On podcast. I'm your host, Adam Bellow, and I'm just super excited to have a fun interview with a fun guy. Fun is the theme over here. Really excited for our next guest, Jed Dearybury, who is an incredible former educator, fun expert, playologist, which is a shirt that I've seen him showing off that he created recently, and just an all-around great guy. And Jed, thank you so much for taking some time and joining me on the podcast.
Man, it's an honor to be here. I've been a big fan of yours for a long, long time. And
Likewise.
to chat with you for a little bit is just an honor. I'm excited to be here, see where our conversation leads us.
Awesome. Yeah. And the last time we saw each other in person, I think we ran into each other, of all places, in Disney. But as they say, it's a small world after all.
It is a small world. You know, it was so funny. I remember when I saw you, I remember exactly where we were. We were walking across the bridge. You were coming from Adventureland into Main Street. I was going the other direction. And what a fun moment that was to look up, and there you were. And it took me a minute to kind of process, because
I know.
You just don't think of people that running into each other at Disney when you live in different parts of the country.
That's right. That's right.
But I will tell you this: almost every time I've been to Disney in the last 2 or 3 years, I've seen somebody that I know in there.
That's awesome.
It's so much fun to see somebody at Disney. I love it. I'm a big Disney nerd too. You mentioned fun is the theme here. I'm going again in a few weeks.
Nice. When are you going?
The first week of October.
Very cool.
A friend of mine is going to be down there, and she hasn't been to Disney in like 15 years.
Wow.
And so it's going to be like, being there with somebody when it's fresh and new all over again,
That's awesome.
I'm super excited about being a part of it. Can't wait.
Love it. That's a good segue. Sharing the magic and sharing the fun. And I think that's something you certainly know a heck of a lot about. So, I mean, I could go through the list of your bio and stuff like that. How would you introduce yourself to somebody if they were like, hey, tell me about you?
I always start with educator, because I am an educator at heart. That was where my career started. I still work in higher ed, training future teachers. I teach 2 courses, children's lit and fine arts for the elementary classroom for the University of South Carolina. I love the work that I do there. The next thing I say is I'm an author. I've published 3 books: The Playful Classroom, The Courageous Classroom, and The Playful Life. I also added the title Illustrator. Hesitantly added the title Illustrator because some of my artwork is in the Playful Classroom and the Playful Life. And the publisher said, hey, when your artwork is in a book that aids to the telling of the work, you're an illustrator. And I was like, okay, when I think of an illustrator, I think of, Peter Reynolds, all these amazing people out there who do incredible, but I'm going to own it. I'm an illustrator. And I'm also leaning into the title of artist these days. I've been making a lot of art, creating art, and putting it out there in the world, different platforms, and it's been a lot of fun. So educator, author, illustrator, and newly named artist.
That's amazing. I love that. Yeah. And you mentioned Peter, who's, a dear friend and just an amazing human being.
Yeah.
I've told this story a couple of times. Actually, we had Peter on maybe a year ago on the podcast, and I always tell the story, but it was one of my favorites. We took our kids when they were super little to go to his bookstore. And
Blue Bunny was actually amazing.
Yeah, which is incredible. So he actually was drawing across the street in his studio. Whoever was working at the store called over, and he came on over, which was so kind, and spent some time with my kids. And he said he took out a blank book. They sell books at the bookstore, but one of the books they sold was just like a blank bound white book with just blank pages. And he hands it to my older son at the time, who I think was maybe 7. And he's like, this is my favorite book, because it could be anything you want it to be. And it's that mentality. And I love that you've leaned into, sharing your artwork with the world, which I think is awesome, by the way. I mean, I'm big fan, seen it on Twitter and Instagram and the Etsy shop and all that stuff. So super excited to see that being shared. And obviously people love it, which is awesome. So
yeah. Peter is a dear friend. I'm glad we got on the topic of him. He illustrated the cover of the Playful Classroom
That's right.
and the Playful Life for us, and it just was, when he reached out about doing that, it just floored me.
That's awesome.
Because I've been teaching since 2001, but my first year with my very own classroom was 2003, and that was the year the dot came out. And I have used that book every year of my career, and I'm just obsessed with it. And when I actually got to meet him for the first time was ISTE. And if I could tell this funny story, since we're talking about him, I was at ISTE, and I was kind of in a tech overload. I was like, I don't want any more tech. Get me away from tech. And I wandered into this booth where they were just making art and, making and doing. And I started talking to this girl, Andrea, who later I found out was Andrea Calvin, who's now is a dear friend, who works with Peter. And I was telling her about the work that I did with the dot. And she was like, oh, you got to meet Peter. And I swear to you, I thought, who's Peter? I didn't even know who she was talking about, because sadly, and this is something I've tried to help in my children's lit class, sadly, I think we don't know the authors of children's books enough. We connect with the story, we connect with the illustrations, and we don't know the authors and illustrators as well as we should. So I knew all of Peter's work. I didn't know who Peter was. And next thing I know, Peter Reynolds was standing there talking to me, and I was just like having a moment. And I told him, I would love to tell you more about the work that I do with your books and yada, yada, yada. He said, well, send me some pictures. And he grabs my phone and he puts his number in my phone. I thought he was putting his email in there. He was putting his cell phone in there. So a few weeks later, I was sitting there watching something on TV, and I was like, he gave me that number. I'm going to text it and just see what happens. And next thing I know, there I am having a conversation with Peter. It was just one of those magical moments. He calls them dot connecting moments, and here we are years later. That was 2016. And here we are, 8 years later.
I love that.
He's such a great human, and I'm glad to be connected with him. He's influenced a lot of the work that I do, especially the art part. He's influenced that. So I'm glad awesome. We get to talk about him, honor him.
Yeah, he is definitely one of those special humans. Yeah. I love the connecting dots, and it's Dot Day, I think, a month from today when we're coming recording. Out. So, or a month-ish, as they would say.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Let's dive in. I mean, I feel like we've already kind of got a good sense of kind of, some of the awesome stuff you're doing now, but let's kind of take it back a little bit. We're going to start our questions. Yeah. I always ask a level 1 question, breakouts about gaming. So I always like to ask people, like, what was a game that you played when you were a kid? You have a favorite game from when you were growing up?
So we played a lot when I was little. My play history. We talk about that in the book. What's your play history? I played a lot when I was little. I grew up, I say farm adjacent. My stepdad's family owned a dairy farm. And every house that was on my street was part of the family. And there were peach orchards and dairy cows and cornfields all around me when I was growing up. So we spent a lot of time outside. And one of the games that we played a lot was something called roller bat. I was obsessed with roller bat because it was sports-ish. I wasn't great at sports. I'm still not great at sports. But roller bat, okay, all of your team, all of the people playing with you stood out in a field, and you were at the front of them looking at them. They like a baseball field, if you will. You hold a bat and a ball. You threw the ball up and you hit the ball as far as you could. And then the people in the outfield, if they caught it, they got to become the automatic batter. But if they didn't, if they didn't catch it, they had to throw the ball towards the bat that was laying on the ground, or like roll it. And if they rolled the ball and it hit the bat, then they got to come be the batter. But if they missed, you got to keep batting.
Okay.
So it was I think I liked it because we didn't need anything to play it but a bat and a ball. And even if you didn't have a bat and a ball, if you had a stick and one of those magnolia tree seed pods, the seed pods from a magnolia tree, they make a great ball, or a big fat walnut, or some pecans, or whatever, that you could play with anything. And so I was obsessed with roller bat. We wanted to play it all the time. Another thing that we did, we love to recreate field day games at home.
Fun.
And one of the field day games that I was obsessed with, PE teacher, Miss Austin, taught it to me. It's called Potato in the Can. Have you
Okay.
ever heard of potato in the can?
No.
Okay, so you get one of those tin cans, like the big tin cans that they use in the cafeteria at school.
Uh-huh.
You get one of those, you put it, say, 20 yards down from where you are, and then you put a potato between your legs, and you
Okay.
hop. You
Yeah,
hop
yeah,
to the
yeah.
can.
Yep.
You hop to the can, and then when you get over the can, you had to drop that potato in the can. It looks a little bit like you're using the bathroom, but middle school me loved it because it was hysterical. To play with grown-ups and watch them drop that potato in the can was just absolutely hysterical.
That's awesome.
And you could do it as like a one-time race, or you could divide into teams and do a relay.
Yeah. We used to
I was
relay
ex-
with like hard-boiled eggs on a spoon.
Yeah.
And you had to-
So
yeah.
the same thing.
So, yeah.
I was obsessed with field day games. One year, my sister, last day, I was 12, so she would have been like 6 or 7. I can't remember how old maybe she was in first grade, but she wanted a field day themed birthday party.
It's awesome.
And I got to organize the whole thing. And, it was one of my favorite things I've ever done was organize her birthday party.
I love that.
Yeah, it was really fantastic. I had
You can
such
make
a
that
fun
a
time
side
doing it.
business right now. I bet you there's parents that would love that,
Oh, I'm sure
Anyway.
they would. Look, I will charge you out the wazoo for that.
That's
so
right.
you
You're, I
know.
mean, you're a busy guy. You got stuff going on. I get it. But I'm just saying, that's I love that. Well, what about now? I mean, I would imagine you haven't played most of those games recently. What about now? Do you play any games?
I have not played Rollerbat, but I will tell you, I did stumble across a potato in the can game that comes with 2 plastic cans and some stuffed potatoes.
That's awesome.
And I do own the game. I do own it. I haven't played in a while. How do I play now? Or like games I play. I'll tell you a game that I am obsessed with that me and Matt and my brother-in-law play often is Catan. Settlers of Catan. Do you play Catan? I would think you were a Catan guy.
I'm not a huge Catan guy. My kids are big Catan players. They're big into RPGs and Catan and all that stuff. So that's fun.
I love board games in general. Catan is one we play a lot as a family. There's one called Chameleon. Have you ever heard of Chameleon?
It sounds familiar.
Game.
What's the premise?
The premise is everybody in the room is trying to describe one word, but one person doesn't know what that word is, so they have to pretend that they know what the word is.
Yep.
And then at the end, you have to guess which person was the chameleon, who was the one lying. And it's a really fun game.
That's awesome. My
brother-in-law, he really stinks at lying, and we can always peg him as being, like he can't keep a straight face. I don't know if it's good I don't know if it's good to be good at lying, but in this game you have to be good at it. But he stinks at the game. We love to play that. I mentioned art. Art is very much a form of play for me. This past week, I spent one full day in my office and did nothing but make art. Some of it is stuff I'll share with the world. Some of it is stuff that nobody will ever see until I'm long gone and somebody decides what they want to do with it. But
what's the medium you're using? Are you drawing, or are you doing it on canvas?
I love digital art recently on my iPad. I have a journal that I love to just doodle in, so black ink and crayons. But also I've been leaning into some painted paper and collage lately on canvas. It's when you do painted paper, I think what I've had to do is I had to work to overcome my fear of it being good enough. Because you see people who make art and you're like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. Mine would never be that good. So what I had to where I've started in my creating process is, okay, I love to create. What is something I can create that doesn't have to be perfect? Collage, painted paper, doodles. That's why I love the word doodle instead of draw. If you ask somebody to draw, they tense up, they get nervous. Oh, I can't draw. I've never met anybody that says I can't doodle. Anybody can doodle.
Sure.
Because it takes away the pressure. It takes away the pressure of perfection. And so I believe art should be accessible to all of us. And part of that is shifting our mindset of what art is and what, how to create it, the process. And so that's why I've been leaning into that. In my mind, I want to be a beautiful acrylic painter. I want to make beautiful
All
art
right.
with acrylic paint, but
That's awesome.
I love fun and whimsy. And so that's what most of my stuff is, fun and whimsy versus like, I don't know, setting sun. I probably won't ever paint a setting sun because it's too, I don't know, it's too real. I like fun and whimsy,
Yeah.
fictitious stuff. Yeah.
Well, if you haven't seen Jed's artwork, you could easily go and check it out on his website or on the Etsy shop that's connected there. There's lots of great stickers and stationery and some awesome stuff that you've been creating. So I would urge everyone listening to check it out if they haven't already.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
I love that you're still doing that. It's funny because it all really kind of harkens back to even the message of the dot, like starting and not being
make
perfect.
A mark.
And yeah, exactly.
I don't know if you can see this, but I have that tattooed on my arm right there.
I love it. I love that.
This is Peter's writing. He wrote it in my journal, and I took it to my tattoo artist, and he went, whoop, stuck it right on there.
Amazing.
So, yeah.
I love that. I think you're not the only Peter Reynolds tattoo that I've seen. I think Diane Main has one, and
there's a couple out there.
Yeah, I would imagine there's a bunch. I mean, that's if I were to get one, and I'm a baby, I'm not getting needles unless I actually have to. But if I were to get one, that would definitely be up in the running. I love that guy.
Good.
Well, that's awesome, Jed. So I love the fact you're still playing and creating and sharing. It's obviously a mantra from your books and from just the work that you embody. But let's go back a little bit in your history. So why teaching? Like, I know you were a teacher for around 13 years or so. Like, how'd you get there?
Started in 2001 in elementary and went until 2015 in the elementary world. How did I get there? Well, I guess I tell people that it started with my Cabbage Patch doll, Eric. I got a Cabbage Patch doll when I was a kid, and I played school all the time with him and my sister. And I think to me, teacher is also a helper. And I've just constantly had this desire to help, to help others be better than where they are, not be perfect. But if somebody wants to grow, I want to be a part of that. I want to help them. Ironically, I really suck at plants. I can't nurture a plant to save my life.
Yeah, fair enough.
I cannot help a plant, but I like to help others. And teaching felt like an avenue that was right for that. I was in Senegal in West Africa for the semester before I started teaching. I was teaching there in a mud hut in a village in West Africa.
That's awesome.
And when I came home, I was like, this is it. I actually did not, my 4-year degree was not in education. A lot of people don't know that, but it was actually in Christian studies. I went to a very conservative Southern Baptist college here in Spartanburg, or in Greenville, not Spartanburg. I'm in Greenville. And when I was in Africa, I just had a real shift in my thinking and my belief system, and made some changes in my life, and came home and got my master's in education and started that journey of teaching because it just felt like who I was. I mentioned that field day birthday party. That was a teaching experience. 2 summers I babysat all my cousins, and I ran that like a little summer school.
That's awesome.
We had learning times, we had center time, we had nap time because I needed to watch The Young and the Restless.
Okay, fair enough.
Right. The news, the lunchtime news, and then The Young and the Restless. That was nap time. Don't bother me. They didn't have to sleep, but they had to go lay down somewhere. So I don't know. I just think it's just part of who I am. And now teaching in higher ed, trying to help the future generations of teachers learn and understand the pedagogy and the art of teaching is just so very fulfilling for me. I love that. And then, my mantra is to equip, encourage, and empower. That's what I say everywhere I go, that I want to equip, encourage, and empower. And it has been always just educators, but recently I've really opened that door up to, I want to help equip, encourage everybody and empower everybody. So
love that.
And art is helping me do that right now.
That's incredible. And I love the fact that you're living what you're preaching about. Like The Playful Life was a book I was honored to get to review it before it came out. And I love the fact that it's a genuine, I am watching you embody a lot of what you've talked about. And I don't think that that's always the case with folks that write books. A lot of the times they say it, but it's not a lifestyle.
I'll tell you, Adam, that is just one of the best compliments you could give me. I appreciate that so much because in the world we live in, especially in social media world where, you know, it's hard. I feel like it's very hard for people to be authentic because you
Mhm.
always put your best. So I've really been impacted by the work of Austin Kleon. I'm sure
Yeah,
if you
of
haven't,
course. Show your work and
where
yeah.
show your work, show your work. It started with Still Like an Artist, show your work and then keep going. But that show your work part is so important to me. And that's why I put process videos out there. I don't always put finished product. My products are not always perfect. I share those things anyway. I try and fail. I try and fail. I will put a product on my store, whether I think it'll sell or not, just to see what happens, because you never know how. So, and that has come from the work that I did, in researching play, it through learning and for life. And I had to apply it to my life. I've always been a playful person. I think play has always been a part of my life. As I was telling you my history here, it was easy to rattle off things. Um, but I really felt like I needed to lean into it a little bit more as a grown up. And that's how I landed with the art and things like that. And I love to go and speak and tell others about it. It's so much fun to see the ripple effect of that.
Yeah.
Months after I go somewhere, I'll get a message from somebody that says, after we heard you speak, I started a checker club at my local coffee shop, and now we meet every Friday, and it's a thing. And we've got
That's
like
awesome.
a checker competition. And it seems so insignificant at the time, but as it grows, it just, I don't know. I don't know. It's really cool to be a part of this work. The
Yeah.
world is so heavy. The world is so heavy. And I know because we live in it, we say right now it seems so heavy. It's always been heavy. It's always been heavy. It's just a matter of how we have each felt it at different times. And life is so heavy. I think anything that I can do to help lighten that load a little bit for people has been a lot of my work. And I'm tickled that you were a part of the Playful Life, man. When you said you would read it and put your name on it, I was really honored.
Well, I mean, listen, it was my pleasure to be asked, and I feel like what I said, and I don't remember exactly what I said in the review. I haven't gone back to read what I wrote, but I remember specifically thinking that what I liked about the book was the take on how it was actionable advice.
Right.
And there are so many times where it's like you read books, and listen, there's a time and a place for books that are talking at you or at a higher level. They're inspirational, they're aspirational. I totally get it. But I think, especially with teachers, there's a thread of like, hey, I could implement this, I could do this with actual advice that I think is super relevant and important. And so that's what I remember taking away from that book is like, it actually was, something you could implement as opposed to something that you could kind of like, you'd have to interpret, which again, nothing wrong with that, but I love that actionability.
Well, and I like you said, I'm glad that you can see that action is something taking place in my own life, and it's not just something I'm out there talking about,
So important.
but I'm living it. Yeah, I'm living it. And so, and I'll tell you, I can feel a difference in myself. I can feel
That's
it.
awesome.
I can feel not my confidence growing because I still have a lot of self-doubt, but I'm not afraid of the self-doubt anymore. I'm like, put it out there anyway,
I love
that. Whereas before, I feel like play helps you. We talk about this in the book. Play helps you to silence the inner critic. I mean, I don't think the inner critic ever is going to go away completely, but it definitely helps you put the inner critic on mute. Because when you're in the middle of it and all the endorphins are being released in your body, you're engaged with other people, or even in a moment by yourself, creating art or whatever. It just feels different. It just feels different. And honestly, that's why I think very early on I was attracted to your work because the whole, I remember when I got my first wooden box back in the day, I couldn't wait to play with the kids and see if they could get this thing open,
That's awesome.
It was a magical moment. And I think, that's why we talk about Breakout EDU in, is that what you call it anymore? I feel like I just dated myself. Do you even
No,
call it
you're
Breakout?
good. Yeah, it's still Breakout EDU. That's the company. That's what we call it. You're good.
I was like, I should have done my research beforehand.
No, you're good.
But man, your work embodies playfulness. I was talking to somebody this morning. My friend Nikki, she lives in Salt Lake City, she was up early to go to the airport out there. I was telling her about my day ahead and trying to explain to her, who you were and what you do. And I said, honestly, I feel like he was making breakout rooms playful before anybody even knew what a breakout room was, Like, I feel like you happened before now every corner of every city, there's a breakout room,
Well, we got the idea 100% from those rooms.
But
yeah,
where I live, I'd never heard of those rooms.
Well, it was definitely early. It was definitely early. Yeah. And I will tell you, I didn't know what the concept was when it was brought up to me. I was like, like everyone else, panic room. What are you talking about? So it definitely,
we're going to do this with children.
Exactly. That was our joke for years was, you can't lock kids in rooms, but
can't lock them in the room.
No, I love that. But, you touched on something I think was really interesting, getting back to like kind of, not everything. It's a heavy time right now. And I think that I always try to look at challenges as opportunities. And sometimes that's super hard to do and it's easier to say. But what's a challenge that you kind of overcame in this journey? You could pick anything, whether it's the teaching years, whether it's something in like your phases since then, like something that you were able to tackle.
I have a lot of those. I mean, I won't go into my whole story in detail, but I grew up in an abusive home. The first few years of my life, my father was abusive in all the ways that one could be abusive. And then that abuse, even though my mom left him early on, that abuse continued well on into my adulthood, even in some form or fashion. And that led to a lot of what I call spiritual abuse. I mentioned a little bit of my history as far as that goes. And in the middle of all that, I was also a young gay man here in the South who was fighting all of those things. I was fighting the abuse of my dad, the abuse of the church, the mental abuse that I was going through my own self of trying not to be gay, because that's how it was down here. Mm. And so when I think about the obstacles, all of those, are obstacles, but somehow I'm here and I've made it through those things. I go to therapy. I talk about it a lot. I go to therapy every other week, and I will probably go every other week for the rest of my life because I need that. And I think, honestly, we could all use it. But the biggest obstacle that I think I overcame was that finding my true self in the midst of a world that didn't want me to. Down here where I live in the South, they want conformity in a lot of ways, fall in line, go to church, be a good American, don't break the norms in any way. I was like, that's not me. I'm going to have to break some of these norms, I played the game for a while because I felt like I had to, but the playful life is what really brought me out of that. It brought me out of that even more and more. Now, I wrote the book well after I came out and found my true self. When I look back over, play history is so important to me. If it's out of the books, I want to mention it here. Because I think if I had grown up in a family that did not value play, I don't think I would have made it. If I'm being honest, I just don't think I would have made it. Because in the hardest moments of my life, I would find laughter. I would find art. I would find a book. I would find a game. I would find, for 10 years, I was a runner. I ran marathons. I don't look like it right now, but I used to run. I used to be a really big runner.
That's awesome.
I ran 7 full marathons. And so, that's what helped me overcome those obstacles. All of those things, the playfulness is what helped. And I think that's why I'm so passionate about the work that I'm doing with the books. It's very personal to me. It's not just something I wrote about.
Yeah.
And when I think about the playful classroom, that I wanted to make sure that the spaces I created educationally were also that, because I never knew where any of the kids were coming from, and they needed those moments in that little brief time they were with me to see the value of play in learning and in life.
Yeah.
And so it was nothing for me to sit down at the piano in my classroom or to put on a costume just because. not because we had to learn something to connect to it.
Yeah.
I just wanted to be silly and play with my puss, you
I
know?
love that. I love that. And I think it's such a testament to you to not only think through those challenges and finding yourself and embracing who you are, living through all of that, but then being able to not only survive, not only thrive, but then take what you've learned and flip it into a power that you present to others. Teaching other people that, may not have had anywhere near that experience that you have, but letting them embrace what's so important to you and that play and that joy is remarkable.
Well, I thank you for saying that. And I don't, you said it's a power, and I like hearing that. I don't think of that as a power, but it is a power, I guess. And anything that we can do to help others be more empathetic, I think we should be doing it.
Yeah.
Because you cannot hate when you are full of empathy. You cannot do it. You can't hate anybody who's different. And you can't, it's hard. Play also allows that empathy to build because it lessens the barriers. I tell a story. I mentioned Africa. I tell a story in one of my keynotes about when I was there. I'd been there for 2 weeks. We were barely learning the language. 2 weeks in a country where you don't know the language, you don't know the culture. We learned a little bit before we got there, but it's different when your boots on the ground, right? And I felt very isolated and alone. And then one day, these 2 teenage boys started kicking a soccer ball. And I mentioned I wasn't athletic, but I was like, you know what? I can kick a soccer ball. So I went up there and I didn't know how to say, can I play soccer? I looked at them and I made a motion like, can I play? And they went, yeah, like, come on. And so next thing you know, I'm out there playing soccer with these 2 teenage boys. And within minutes, I don't know how they did it because we lived in a village. There was no water, there was no power, there were no cell phones, there was no nothing. But within minutes, every kid in that village was out there watching the white guy play soccer.
I love that.
So it was hysterical. But what happened in that moment is play built a connection. It built the acceptance of one another. It didn't matter that they were African, I was American. It didn't matter that they were of a different faith. It didn't matter that none of those differences mattered in that moment. And play helps nurture that.
I love that. I love that. That's so awesome. So, I think I might know the answer to this next question, but thinking about.
I'm sorry, I got distracted.
No, you're good.
I'm at the coffee shop, so there's public out here, so I had to talk.
I get it. Of course.
Yeah,
it's your fan base. It's understood.
Well, it's actually that's so cool that I saw her. That is the mother of. The whole time I've been talking to you, I thought she's been sitting right here behind me, and I was like, I know this lady. And her daughter Julia is married to one of my best friends, Josh, and I officiated their wedding years ago.
That's so
cool. That's why I knew her. I've only met her at the wedding, but I recognize her. Yeah,
that's really funny.
Sorry for the disruption. It's real life. Don't be sorry. It's a playful life.
That's right. It's hey, it's you're out in the wild, a celebrity. I get it. It's fine. Thinking about and as I said, I might know the answer to this just based on the way you've been talking about the stuff you're working on now. But what's something that you're passionate about learning or teaching right now? Is it art, or is there some other stuff that you're just super interested in as well?
Well, art is going to always be a part of whatever I'm teaching because the way that I teach it is usually always through the arts. Something that I'm honestly trying to grow my understanding of is marketing and how to share, how to market the message so that I can broaden my platform of where to share, how to share. That's coming from an educational background. Yes, we know how to sell learning to students, but I don't know how to sell it in this online space. I don't know how to sell it to the masses. I'm still figuring that out. I believe in this work and I need to better understand how to get the message out there. And so that's something I've been, trying to dig into and learn a little bit more. I've reached out to a couple of my friends who work in marketing. And we've had some calls and, things like that, and I'm trying to grow that side of my brain. That is not my side. I don't know that it's anywhere in my brain. I'm having to put it in there, So I've been learning about that. But specifically, you mentioned the art. Last week, I went through this book about digital drawing by a lady named Lisa Bardot. She knows everything there is to know about Procreate. And I worked through every page of that book. She's got these little prompts and projects that you're supposed to do to help you learn what and I did every single one of them. And I shared those illustrations out in the world. And gosh, one of them's horrible. Like I drew this cityscape and all the buildings are like leaning to the side a little bit, but I shared it anyway. Um, I just like to learn. I don't care what it is. I love to read articles that people send me online. I'm a really big book nerd as of the last few years. Well, I say few years. I'd say 10 years or so. I've been sharing the books that I read on my Instagram. I use the hashtag Jed Reads. And I've built a little book following of people that follow me just so they could see what I'm reading next. And that's kind of fun.
That's awesome.
So, I mean, learning is just all around me. It's something that I want to learn. This is something I want to learn, and I need to look up where there's a class. I want to learn how to make my own lattes. I love a coffee shop. I'm obsessed with a coffee shop. One of my favorite things to do when I'm traveling for work is to Google the local coffee shop near the hotel. I will not go to a Starbucks. I'm not anti-Starbucks. Sometimes I have to get one in the airport. But I would much rather go to a local coffee shop where the vibe is, the daily grind of that area.
Love it.
But I don't understand how lattes are made. I watch them do it. It doesn't make sense to me. I need to get behind the counter. I need to take a class. I need to learn to make a latte. Matt bought me a little latte maker for Christmas. It wasn't the really expensive one because I told him, I was like, we don't need to invest in this till I know what I'm doing. But now that I think about it, I'm not going to know what I'm doing until I have the machine, like they have at the
That
coffee
is
shop.
true. The coffee shop machine, I don't know, but we have one that I got years ago.
In between, yeah.
Well, one that's affordable, but I will tell you, it's not too hard to do, but it's definitely a time-consuming cleaning operation.
It is a process. Is it? Okay.
Well, some of them, I didn't know that. They auto clean, but like anything with the milk frother, like anyway. But
you don't want to get the.
Yeah, you don't want milk sitting around. But I love the fact that you go to the local scene. I'll be honest, like most of the time, just for time's sake, I'm like whatever's closest. So if it's a Starbucks, it's a Starbucks. But I do love, and I appreciate, especially like in Manhattan or wherever I'm around, it's like, let's go somewhere where it's not the cookie cutter standard place. So I love that.
Well, here's the thing. Here's what I love about that is that it's 99% of the time I meet someone who is doing something cool. Not that they're not doing that at Starbucks, but you just meet really cool people at a local coffee shop. You meet the artists, you meet the book people, you meet the eclectic vibe that I like at a coffee shop. And I don't know, one day I kind of low key want to work at one. Just maybe like one day a week. Just one day a week, but none of them want to hire you for one day a week. If they do, it's Saturday morning. They want to hire you for Saturday morning from 7 to 2. Who wants to work Saturday from 7 to 2?
I think you could pitch it to them where you'll not only make the lattes, but you'll also doodle a quick doodle on each of their cups. Yep.
See that, and
then that's Saturday morning or one day a week or Tuesday or whatever. I don't know. Anyway, just you pitch it to them. I think you could sell it.
I low key have this dream of like opening my own place with books and beer and art and coffee. I would love to own my own place one day. Maybe when I retire.
I love that.
That's
very cool.
I don't think that's much of a retirement if you start your own business.
It could be a lifestyle business.
I think it would be fun. I think it would be fun.
That's awesome. Well, you've given us so much great stuff here, Jed. I just want to ask, one of the questions that I like to ask, just because I feel like I learned so much more about, we've heard so much about your journey and about all the awesome stuff you're doing. What's a piece of advice, especially with it being back to school, with all these new teachers going back, with all the teachers headed back to the classroom? What's like the best piece of advice or a piece of advice that you'd want to share with our listeners?
So I'm going to bring this full circle back to Peter Reynolds. We talked about the dot, make your mark. One of his books that I give to every college student of the last, 10 years that I teach, I give them a copy of his book, Be You. And I give them this book for several reasons. One, I don't want them to walk away from my class thinking that they have to be like me. I am trying to teach you how to be yourself as a teacher, not be me. Because if you try to be me as a teacher, you're going to fail at it. Because you are you and you should be you, right? And what I love about that book is every page it focuses on that be yourself, be yourself. But at the end, that's out of the book, Peter has a little message at the end, and he writes the words, be more you. Don't just be you, but be more of you. And I love that whole mindset of be more you. Figure out who you are, then lean into it so much and just put it out there more and more and more. Every one of us have a dream, an idea, a creation, something inside of us that we hold back for whatever reason. And at the end of that book, Peter encourages us to be more you. And I just love that message.
Yeah.
Of course, I want everybody to be themselves. But when you find yourself, be more of that. Because odds are you held back for so long. And so, we mentioned my tattoo, my make a mark. Next time I see him, I'm going to get him to write and be more you. And I'm going to add it under there. So it's the two books
That's awesome
that I use every semester. I start with the dot and I close with be you. And so I just think I love that message of being more you. It's beautiful to me. And and I always preface this. It's not saying that being you isn't enough. Don't hear that. Being you is more than enough. But being more of you is a gift not only to the world, but it's a gift to yourself. If you can be more of yourself, it's you're giving yourself the ultimate gift. Because nobody else can give that. Nobody else can give that but you. So that's my parting wisdom, I guess you'd say.
No, I love that. I love that. And I think it's so important, and it's hard, I think it's such an easy thing to understand, and it's such a hard thing necessarily to put into practice because people are fighting whatever the inner critic is, or however you phrased it earlier. I think that's a battle always.
Have you read the book Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert?
Yes. Which is
I'm obsessed
incredible.
with that book. It's required reading. It's required reading in my elementary art class.
I love that.
Because the number one thing all of us need to do is to get over our fears, and we all have them. And she lists them so beautifully in the beginning.
Yeah.
And I ask students to write down their own fears and reflect on their fears. I do that in my workshops. I'm doing a workshop in just a few weeks with the Santa Clara County library system in San Jose, California, and Santa Clara County government offices. And we're going to talk about the fear. I'm going to have them list their fears, what's holding them back in their work, because they know those fears better than I do. I've never worked in county government. I don't know. But I guarantee you there's fears that are holding them back. And we're going to talk about that with these people. So
I love that.
I love her book. If anybody's looking for a good read, check it out. Big Magic.
That's a good one. That is definitely a good rec. Awesome. Well, I think we've covered so many topics here. I really appreciate you sharing, both details about your personal arc and narrative, and just the passion is so clear as to all the great stuff you're doing. And where can folks learn a little more about you or pick up some of your awesome artwork and stickers?
So
and such?
I have a website. MrDearybury.com. If you see on the screen, it says @Mr. Dearybury. That's my Instagram. Mr. Dearybury is everything that I'm connected to. So if you want to email me, it's Mr. Dearybury at Gmail, Mr. Dearybury at Hotmail. I probably have Mr. Dearybury at Juno somewhere if I can remember the password. But there's just lots of different ways to connect with me out there in the world. And just if you Google Mr. Dearybury, you'll find me anywhere and everywhere on every platform. But start at the website.
Easy.
That way you can see what I offer out in the world as far as like work goes. I'd love to come, most of my work is with educators, but the last year or two since the Playful Life has come out, I've started to venture into new worlds beyond education, because Playful Life is for everybody. It's not just a teacher book. So check that out. Invite me to your space. I'd love to bring some playfulness to wherever you are.
That's awesome. Well, Jed, thanks so much for joining us today. It was really, really great to chat. And until the next time, everybody, game on.